Hi, I'm Michelle from Blotchy Paper Blooms, and today I'm going to show you a really quick technique of how to use alcohol inks to create variety in your paper petals. So once you've got the hang of making paper flowers using the basic papers, using like the flat standard colours, you might want to start to add more detail to your flowers and to make them look more realistic. And the easiest way to do that is by using colouring techniques. So there's all sorts of different methods that you can use to colour your paper to make your petals look more realistic. And you can do those with the paper before you make the petals, or on your finished flower you can just add little details that help to make it just that touch more realistic. So today I'm going to show you the first technique, which is actually a very simple one, and I think it scares a lot of people to think about how to use alcohol inks. But it's actually very, very straightforward. So I'm going to show you quickly how you can make a huge impact to your flowers. So this technique in particular is great if you want variety in your petals. If you don't want just a solid flat colour, you want them to look more realistic and more natural. You could actually use this technique for pretty much any petal on any flower, because obviously in nature there is no flat colours, there's always variety in the petals. Obviously in reality it would take you a very long time if you did this on every single petal you ever made. So I suggest that you save it for certain ones that need this kind of technique. So something like a hydrangea where it's got that blotchy kind of variation on the petals, this is absolutely perfect for that. So this is the sort of finished colouring you'll end up with. And obviously you can see it's got a lot of variation in there, which is perfect for the look we're trying to achieve today. So it's a really quick and easy technique, so I hope you give it a go, and if you do, then let me know in the comments below how you get on. So this technique is great for something like a hydrangea. It gives you that kind of blotchy finish where it goes from like a darker shade of blue to a lighter, almost white shade, without being a standard gradient. So you can actually buy crepe paper that does have a gradient to it. I've only ever seen it in the Italian crepe paper. So with something like a hydrangea, you don't want a standard light to dark gradient. You want something that's a bit more random, a bit more all over the place. So the easiest way to do that is with alcohol inks. So you want to start with some white crepe paper, either the pure white or the slightly off-white. This one's the off-white and I've used this and it's fine, but whichever you have. So I have a tutorial coming very soon for hydrangea, and I'm going to do the blue sort of stereotypical hydrangea, but obviously you can do that in different shades. You can get some lovely pink and purple hydrangeas too. So today I'm going to show you the colours that I'm using for a blue hydrangea. Obviously you can vary them if you prefer, but this is just what I prefer to use and I found works really well. So to get this particular look that I'm going to show you today, I'm using alcohol inks from the Tim Holtz range by Ranger, and the colours I'm using are Cool Peri and Stonewashed. Now of course you can use any other blue that you choose. If you have a slightly different colour at home already and you want to use that, that's totally fine. I'm just showing you the ones that I've used and I found worked really well. I would say in particular the Stonewashed, which is obviously like the name suggests, like a denim-y colour, and then the Cool Peri's got a bit of a lilac-y tint to it, so it's just the perfect shade for a hydrangea. But you can mix and match different alcohol inks to get the right kind of colouring too. There's loads of different alcohol inks out there on the market. I've only ever tried these ones, the Tim Holtz Ranger ones, and I highly recommend them. I will pop some links in the description box below where you can get hold of them from. I've just updated my website to have like a worldwide supplier list on it, so hopefully there will be something on there for your particular country, so do check that out. So in addition to alcohol inks, you're going to need to be able to water that down. So you need to use something like this. So this is the isopropyl alcohol, and this is the stuff that you get in a pharmacy. You can get it anywhere, any pharmacy, most supermarkets or grocery stores. It's usually very cheap. I think this whole bottle was like $3 Canadian. So don't spend too much on it at all. And you don't necessarily need a certain percentage either. So this is 70%, but it's just what my local store had. So grab yourself a bottle of this. You can get a smaller bottle as well, you don't need this much. And we use this to water down the alcohol. So if you use actual water, it won't work. So this dilutes the alcohol so you have more to work with. The other great thing about this is if you make a mess with your alcohol ink, you can clean it up with this. So just put this on a damp tissue or cotton pad, and then you can wipe up any messes you make with it too. And then you also need a big fluffy paintbrush, so like something like this. The big fluffy head on it is good because that covers a lot more area. You can do it with a smaller brush, but it's just a bit more time consuming and fiddly. And then also you just want a pot of some kind of jar to put everything in. So I'm just using an old jam jar, and then you can mix your colours in there as well. And then the last thing you're going to need is something to protect your workspace. So it might sound strange, but the most cost effective and actually the best material I've found for protecting my workspace is cling film. So you might know it as a different name, shrink wrap, cling wrap, plastic wrap, something of that nature. But whatever you call it, it's the clear plastic wrap that you use for food. And that works perfectly on your workspace. So you can lay down one layer, then another over the top and smooth it down and make sure there's a bit of an overlap. And that basically gives you a waterproof workspace that you can make all the mess you need to and then just throw in the bin afterwards. So this is the sort of thing that you should be left with in the end. There's obviously a lot of different variation in the colours. You've got some light blues, some dark blues, a little bit of lilac in there as well. And that is perfect for the variation that you will get in a hydrangea. You could also use this technique for all sorts of other petals and flowers too. It doesn't have to just be the hydrangea. It's just a really good skill to have, and you can experiment and play around with different options for it too. So you'll get a nicer effect if you start with crepe paper that's already partially stretched. And then take your glass jar or your pot, whatever you're using, and put about 1 inch of the isopropyl alcohol into that. Then I suggest you start with the lighter of the two colours that you're using and put several drops into the jar with that and mix it around with a paintbrush. You can build this up as you go, so just start gently with the light colour and see how you get on with it. And then you're literally just going to dab that all over the whole paper. For this effect, it's quite important to cover the entire paper first, because that helps each of the subsequent blobs that you're going to add to kind of fade and merge with each other. Otherwise you get very harsh lines and it doesn't create the same effect. So I'm just very roughly dabbing these on with the brush. You can paint them on if you prefer, but I quite like the effect of like dabbing it with the brush here, because you still get that bit of variation as well. So just very quickly do that to the whole sheet, and then you want to add some more ink into the same jar. You'll obviously have quite a lot less of the isopropyl alcohol at the bottom, but don't worry, because that's going to make this a stronger colour. So obviously the more of that there is, the more it dilutes it. So the idea is that you just keep working in stages and adding a little bit more each time. Very randomly put these dabs onto the paper, don't do any specific pattern, and just keep building it up. And keep going back in and adding more and more and more. And at the moment we're just using this one colour. You'll see I go in with variations of the two or just more of each one as I build up the intensity to be the colouring that I'd like it to be. I'm also trying to work in patches and areas if I can. So you'll see that in the middle I've left it quite light and some of the darker patches are towards the edge. You don't necessarily need to do that, but that just gives you a lot more variety. So when you cut your petals out from this sheet, some will be quite light, some will be quite dark. If you do the same technique everywhere, then you might end up with very similar coloured petals. So it just depends what look you're going for. So here I have quite a lot of ink to not very much of the isopropyl, and that's fine, that gives you the darker shade here. And this in particular is where you want your paper to be wet so that you can easily blend it out. You'll see some of them I'm dabbing and some I'm actually brushing them to blend them a bit more, so just if you need to blend it, do it straight away, don't let it dry. You also don't need very much on the brush to make an impact, especially because we're already working with this wet sheet of paper. And then make sure that you mix both colours together at times. If you run out of the isopropyl, you can just pour some more in there if you need to, or you can just work with the neat inks at this stage to get a very dark colouring to it. Also bear in mind it might dry slightly different to how it looks right now. So this on my screen looks a little bit purpley and it's looking quite dark in places. You'll see obviously on the finished sheet that I held up before, and I'll show you again at the end, it looks more blue and it's not as dark either, so just bear that in mind when you're working. If you're not sure on the colours that you want, then maybe just do a small test on a bit of scrap paper before you start so that you can figure out exactly what colour you'd like. In this area here, obviously it's going quite dark, so do make sure to blend that out. Just lots of dabs, and if you need to brush it, you can do. And you can go back in and work over certain areas again. If the paper does crease, then just pull it out slightly like I did there, otherwise you might end up with a line as it dries. And that's it. It really is that simple. So you can just leave this to dry for a few hours and don't do anything with it until it is fully dry. But then once it is, you can just use it in the same way as any other crepe paper. Make sure that you do give your brush and your jar a good clean as well at the end. And you can just use the isopropyl alcohol for that. Just put a little bit in the bottom of the jar, swirl it around, and then just use that to clean the brush. The other really nice thing about this technique is obviously you have this darker shade here. This is the side that I dyed. But if you turn it over onto the back, it's got a paler version of it. So that also works really well if you have a petal that you want to be a different shade on one side to the other. You can obviously go back in and dye this side as well if you prefer, or you can keep one side darker and one side lighter. Personally, I keep them one light and one dark, but it's whatever you prefer. Do try it with different colour options too. Hydrangeas don't just come in blue, there's some really nice pale pink or like a peachy coral colour as well. So you could give that a try as well. If you do try that, I recommend the salmon colour from the Alcohol Inks range, the Tim Holtz one. And that gives a really nice effect too. So I hope you found that useful. If you do give it a try, I'd love to know how you got on. You can either share your photos with me on Instagram, I'm at talmuchley_paperblooms, or you can email them to me, blooms@talmuchley.com. I'd love to see how you get on, and if you're willing to share, then let me know, because that would be great to share with other paper florists too. As I say, I'll have a tutorial for hydrangeas coming very soon, so you can actually put this into action for that as well. So make sure that you're subscribed to my channel so you get a notification when that launches. You can also join my email list at talmuchleypaperblooms.com so that you'll be the first to get notified when I launch the new videos and tutorials, as well as get access to special discounts that I don't offer anywhere else. Until next time, happy flower making!